All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are heading way out into the woods. But we're not going to talk about bears or getting caught in a storm. No, we're going deeper into some really unsettling encounters that prove the most unpredictable dangers out there are often the ones walking on two legs.
So let's start with this thought because it really reframes everything. We go out into nature for the peace and quiet. But what if that silence isn't peaceful at all? What if when all the birds and bugs suddenly go quiet, it's a warning sign? A signal that a different, much smarter predator is nearby, and you just stumbled into their house.
We're all taught the basics, right? Prepare for animal encounters, watch out for natural hazards. But what happens when the thing you should be scared of is human? These next few stories, they pull back the curtain on a much darker side of the wild, where the dangers are intelligent, they're unpredictable, and sometimes they're just completely bizarre.
Okay, our first case. This one comes from a hiker out in the Pacific Northwest. And believe me, it starts weird and then just spirals into something that honestly makes no logical sense.
So, picture this. It's a totally normal day. A guy is taking his two dogs for a walk on a trail he knows like the back of his hand. It's a quiet path that follows a river, a place he goes all the time, and he almost never runs into anyone.
But this hike, it's different. About 2 miles in, he comes across something that just stops him in his tracks. Nailed to a tree are two cow tongues, tied on with bright red rope. And if that's not weird enough, down in the river, he sees large cow bones scattered all over the riverbed.
And right away, the whole feeling of the place changes. His dogs, who are usually pretty tough, just freak out. Their tails go between their legs, and they just freeze, staring into the woods like they see something that he can't. They are so terrified that he has no choice but to turn around and get out of there.
Now here's where the story gets really impossible. That image just stuck with him, so a week later, he hikes back to the exact same spot, and it's gone. I don't just mean the tongues and the bones are gone. The entire tree he saw them on, a tree he specifically remembered because of its weird lean, had completely vanished. No stump, no sawdust, no holes in the ground. It was like the whole thing was just erased.
All right, so our next case moves from that kind of creepy, unexplained stuff to a very real, very direct physical threat. This one takes us out to the Catskills, where a solo hiker finds something strange that quickly turns into a desperate race for her life.
So, our hiker, her name's Rachel, is out on Blackthorn Ridge, and she spots this little leather-bound journal just sitting at the base of a tree. Naturally, she picks it up. It seems to belong to another hiker, but as she starts reading the entries, they get more and more frantic and dark.
The writing gets really clipped. The person mentions how the woods have gone dead quiet. No birds, no animals, nothing. And then there's the last entry, just scratched onto the page, a desperate warning to stay away from a place called Hollow Crag. The big problem? That's exactly where she was heading.
And almost immediately, that fear becomes very real. First, she hears the loud snap of a branch right behind her. Then, when she gets to the crag, a man just appears out of the trees wearing these bizarre, tattered clothes. He doesn't say anything. He just starts copying her movements, like a mirror. When she finally makes a break for it and starts running, a voice screams from the woods, "She's getting away!" And that's the moment she realizes she isn't just being followed, she's being hunted.
She managed to escape, thankfully. But later, a park ranger gave her a chilling explanation. He told her about these reclusive, totally off-grid communities living way up in the mountains. Some people call them wild people. Apparently, they are fiercely territorial. They hate any kind of government authority, and they will aggressively deal with anyone they see as an intruder on their land.
Okay, our final case. This one shifts from physical intimidation to straight-up psychological warfare. It's about two campers who find themselves the targets of this really sophisticated trick, one designed to use their own human instincts as a weapon against them.
So yeah, this was a deliberate trap. Deep in the night, these campers hear a sound that is just designed to make your blood run cold. A baby crying out in the pitch-black woods. But the sound is on a loop, and pretty soon it sounds like it's coming from multiple directions, getting closer and closer. It's a sound that we are biologically wired to react to, and someone was using that as a weapon.
Luckily, one of the campers was former National Guard, and he pretty quickly figured out this wasn't real. It was a ploy. The whole point wasn't to actually hurt them. It was to scare them so badly that they'd bolt from their camp in a panic, leaving all their expensive gear behind for someone to just walk in and take. So this number 2, it represents our two campers. And instead of running blindly into the dark, they made a really smart, calculated choice. They abandoned their camp, sure, but they only took the essentials. And then they hiked for miles back to their truck in total darkness, refusing to turn on their flashlights because they knew that would just make them an easy target.
So what do we actually learn from all these terrifying stories? I think it shows that when we talk about wilderness survival, the conversation needs to get a lot bigger, because the biggest threat out there isn't always a bear or a blizzard.
These cases really lay out a whole spectrum of human threats. You've got the completely unexplained stuff, maybe ritualistic. You have the fiercely territorial people who see you as an invader. And then you have the clever opportunists who use fear as just another tool to commit a simple crime.
And all of this leaves us with one really critical question. We walk into the wilderness assuming that everyone out there is playing by the same social rules that we are. But these stories are a pretty stark reminder that in the huge, remote corners of the world, that assumption can be a dangerous, even fatal mistake. So the real question is, when you leave that trail, whose rules are you really playing by?